two of them said, "This ain't sharp." Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down, broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. And Skinny Doug said, I love it, well done and hurrah. Can you tell me another? How clever you are."
My turn.
Okay,
Ahmad. You want to tell them which grade you are?
I'm in grade 1.
Yeah?
I'm learning Japanese today.
Can you say something in Japanese?
Yeah, I can say self-introduction.
Self-introduction?
私はAhmadです。6歳です。1年生です。どう好き? Happy dog tail.
My passion is mainly my family. They drive me. They keep me going. So I have no family here. All my family back in Awaz, and I left the country by myself. So when I wake up in the morning, see my kids, they're just happy, you know. Sometimes, you know, they fight together, they're jealous of each other, but the most of things, they just bring happiness to me. And also my wife, I'm very thankful to have very helpful my wife. She's very supportive to me.
My honours thesis looked at the implications of adopting the punitive Australian offshore processing model. And so I compared 2 detention centres in Australia. I looked at Manus Island and Nauru, and I compared them with 2 detention centres in France, in Marseille and Paris. And I looked at the consequences that arise from borrowing this Australian model. So on one hand, you have the situation on Manus and Nauru that is a human rights atrocity. This is systematic and systemic and deliberate. It's designed to make people feel this way, this spectacle of suffering, and publicising by all means these fantastic ways and that people are committing acts of self-harm and violence against themselves is something that's purposeful and publicised, and Australia wants that gaze on the centres. And for refugee is setting themselves alight and self-immolating and sewing their lips shut and jumping off things and slicing their wrists on the razor wire that encircles the camp. This is exactly the kind of narrative that they're trying to exploit to say, well, this is what we're protecting you from. This is what you're supposed to be afraid of. Facing refugees that arrive in Australia, it's by all means, again, dissuasive. The idea is we want as little people as possible, but we want them to elect to leave if possible. When you first arrive in Australia on a bridging visa, you don't have the right to work. And because of that, you're reliant on the dole, on welfare payments. But as we know, those welfare payments are not a livable wage. It's below the poverty line. And so you put people on this meager salary where they end up having to work with NGOs like the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, for example, to get food and meals and dishwashing liquid and soap, because the salary that the government has put them on is not livable, but at the same time, they also don't permit them to work. And so you're condemning them, it's this monotony that you're condemning them to. You're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to study, you just have to exist. It's so disheartening that they have to, against every step of the way, fight against the system. got involved with the Centre for Multicultural Youth, and I was working and volunteering with young people from refugee backgrounds that had newly arrived in Australia. And that was really a huge turning point for me, working and meeting these young people and hearing all of their stories. And I remember saying, my friend and I were talking about it, we did it together, we were talking, and we were saying to each other, I just can't wait until these people are released into the world. And the second their English gets up to the standard that people are looking for and they're able to, quote unquote, assimilate, this city is not ready for the things that they're going to achieve.
I study part-time, I work part-time, and I work on other things as well, other smaller projects that interest me. Like right now, me and a friend are actually working on starting a podcast together. I go a lot to the botanical gardens actually, where we're going now. I usually like to go for really long walks, places like here, in the park, around the gardens. And there's this really nice waterway. There's like water flowing down onto the rocks. And it's really beautiful. Like you just go in there, you take your shoes off, and you just you feel like a kid again. I usually like to go there for just I guess to clear my head, for clarity, and to just escape. I guess I go there often. By the standards of someone who was raised in Afghanistan or just in the Middle East, I would consider my childhood fairly normal, average. But I think by the standards of someone who was raised in the West, who was born in the West, you could say it was pretty horrific or traumatic. When you're raised in a politically chaotic region of the world and you belong to an ethnic minority as well, you can't escape that. And that's the situation that I was raised in. You it would literally be, I would walk out of the house and every second person I would see on the street, they'd be missing a limb. They were missing an arm or a leg because they got caught on a bomb blast. Constant noises of bombs, grenades, gun shootings, heavy artillery. So, but that's all we knew. That's all I knew growing up, so I thought that was normal. I thought everyone lived that way. So we came here on a humanitarian visa in 2009. But the process of actually coming here the legal way, which is through getting a humanitarian visa, coming here on a refugee status, it took us 11 years. So my parents were actually trying to come here before I was even born. This is why people risk their lives. They come here through people smugglers. They come here on a boat because not everyone has that luxury to wait around for 11 years for everything to get processed. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I actually used to work a lot more in my high school years than I do right now. And the reason why I had to work a lot of hours, I was working like 3 jobs, 6 days a week, every single week for about 3.5 years straight throughout high school. And the reason behind that is because one of the challenges for my parents was finding employment. So that burden fell upon the children because someone has to bring money, someone has to bring income into the family, right? And so that's also another conflict that is very prevalent in immigrant families, the role reversal, the children becoming the parent of the parents. So that's the main reason why I've always been working. They would constantly perpetually compare their lives here to what it was back then in their home country. And even though by, I guess, Australia's standards, their lives here might not be very good, but to them, compared to what it was before in the home country, it's wonderful. So to an extent, it can lead to complacency. But is this all we should settle for? Just because our lives aren't perpetually in danger, should we just settle? Should we just become complacent? I don't think so. And I think a lot of the younger generation are starting to realize this, that we can rise above and transcend what we have settled for right now. That we can go out there and do great things.
At no point did we intend to leave the country, because that's where our life was, that's where our family was, and we were doing fine. And we never wanted to come to Australia or to leave Iraq at all until the invasion in 2003, when everything changed for us. My name is Fadak. I'm a community lawyer and refugee advocate, and I came to Australia 16 years ago on a humanitarian visa through the Family Reunion Program. So I started a speaking tour about a year ago to travel around Australia and to tell my story of coming here to Australia as a refugee and as a child, and to meet as many Australians as possible so that I can humanise the refugee narrative and change it to a narrative that is positive, that is about people, and showcase my story and my life as an example of what supporting people seeking asylum could look like in Australia. So next week I'm heading to the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, and I'll be amongst advocates and NGO groups from all over the world, meeting with the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees, and we'll be advocating for people seeking asylum globally, and kind of taking some issues that are happening in Australia with us to present them over there and to connect with other NGO groups. I'll also be advocating for women and children who have been displaced as a result of the invasion of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and talk about how we can support them in a more structured and ongoing way. And I want to talk about the responsibilities of the private sector, of the public sector here in Australia and all over the world in permanently supporting people seeking asylum. So essentially to be a lot of lobbying and meetings and advocating for people seeking asylum globally, but particularly in Australia and in the Middle East. The fabric and the makeup of our nation is that we are a diverse nation, we are a migrant nation, and unless you are Indigenous, you came here somehow, and we have that in common, and we have more in common than we have differences. We all know when someone needs to escape for a political reason or a fear of persecution, it needs to happen straight away. I mean, think about it. If you need to run away because someone's trying to kill you, are you going to wait 3 years before, so that Australia can give you a phone call? No.
A few years ago, there was a deal done with the Obama administration which said that America will take a certain number of our refugees off Manus and Nauru, and we have to receive people that America doesn't want. That has led to some difficulties, one of which was characterised by an email I got the other day from a guy who's on Manus. He's been there now for 6 years, and he's been offered a place in America. The problem is his wife and children live in Australia, and yet we are prepared to break up his family and send him off to America or leave him rotting on Manus Island. It's also interesting to note that given Australia's important role in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was an Australian who presided over the General Assembly of the United Nations when the Universal Declaration was accepted, Article 14, I think it is, of the Universal Declaration says that every human being has the right to seek asylum. And yet our government dishonestly calls them illegal. It's simply wrong. And I'm not aware of any other country that mistreats asylum seekers the way we do. A lot of countries have pointed to what Australia is doing. They've adopted what they call the Australian solution. And I think that's tragic. I mean, some countries probably can't manage the number of refugees that they get, and so it would be understandable if they responded in a way that was designed to protect the fabric of their community. Australia has reached an interesting demographic tipping point. We now have more people older than 45 than we have people younger than 45. And that has very significant consequences for the way the economy works. 51% of all the refugees in the world are under 18 years old. We actually could benefit by being decent to refugees. We spend insane amounts of money treating them the way we do. In fact, when the Nauru and Manus exercise was at full strength, we were spending something like $5,000 million a year mistreating people, pushing them away and locking them up on places like that. Now, I worked out that if we said, okay, let's shut down offshore processing, let's assume that the boats will start coming in. It's not clear because there's a ring of steel around the northern part of Australia. And let's suppose that the number of boat people coming to Australia suddenly rocketed up to the all-time historic high of 25,000 in a year. This is very unlikely, but assume it. And say, okay, if they get here, we will say you'll be put in immigration detention for a maximum of 1 month. That month will be used for preliminary health and security checks. Makes sense. At the end of 1 month, they'll be given interim visas which release them into the community, allow them to work, allow them full access to Medicare and Centrelink benefits, requires them to stay in regular contact with the department so they can't just disappear, and requires that until their refugee status is decided, they must live in a specified regional town or city. Not in the coastal capitals, but in a regional town or city. Now, if you assume that the numbers rocket to 25,000, which I think is unlikely, and if you assume that every single one of them stayed on full unemployment benefits for the whole time, it would cost $500 million a year. We're spending $5,000 million a year at the moment mistreating them. And all that $500 million would be spent in towns in regional Australia, which are suffering at the moment because they're losing population. So we could actually do some good for refugees, we could do some good for the economy of regional Australia, we could stop brutalising people and save ourselves almost $500 million a year. They aren't criminals and we don't need to be protected from them.
We originally met each other when we were working at the convention centre together.
We met in the kitchen, so when I came to Australia, I started working in the kitchen. I started from scratch, so I was working as a kitchen hand, washing dishes. And then my chef, my head chef, he said, how about you just promote you to be a cook. So I started cooking in the hot section. So that was in 2010, 2011. So I was, when I came to Australia, my English was zero. So I don't know, somehow she understood what I said, I think when you don't have the language, it makes your life harder because you have to work harder to prove to the people you have a good intention, and that's why I used to not front of her or when I was with her, but in the kitchen too. So I just, I used to work harder. So. To prove to the people I'm capable of doing things, and also working hard to prove to her I love her. So.
For me, it was really exciting actually, because Ahmad would spend a lot of time, I think maybe because he was a single man, but he would spend a lot of time with other families and big gatherings. So when we were dating, we would go to family barbecues and it was always food. It was always a big meal. So I used to come along and everybody was speaking Arabic and trying to practice their English with me. And that was good fun. And I think because of the language barrier, I could learn the cultural etiquette by just being with them and cooking and cleaning and just helping out.
Celebrate the first Christmas with our family. It was very weird, you know, first Christmas.
It was awkward. I think my family probably don't have any friends from a different cultural background. And maybe the language barrier was there too, so I'm not sure if they didn't really talk too much.
Yeah.
It was quite not very nice, really.
Yeah, it was very weird. Another weird thing which her brother cooked the lamb, but he didn't know how to roast it. So it's about to burn the lamb, and it was a pork belly. So I saved their Christmas dinner.
Well, yeah, you kind of stepped in, didn't you?
Yeah, stepped in and saved their Christmas dinner, and everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And again, you know, everybody started talking to me and thanked me
That
for,
probably helped.
you know, cooking a lovely dinner. She got very nice family, which now, yeah, I lost my father, you know, and her father just like being very supportive to me, and her mom too. She supported us during the when both of us we went to the university and studied in the university. They've been supporting us morally and also financially. Yeah, so by the time, since I met them first time, but now, you know, they just like, they see me as a son for them, yeah. And I think I look at your father as a, you know, my father, yeah. And her mom, it's my mom too. I don't have my family here, so yeah, they're my family now.
No, I'm very proud of Ahmad. I mean, I can't imagine what he's gone through and what he faces daily, even here in Australia. Even though now he's got his well-paying job, he's got his family, he's comfortable, and good friends and support around him. It's difficult. I'm proud of him just keeping on going, you know. And he's very good at diffusing all kinds of things that stress me out. He's just really resilient, I think, and I think that's what I'm most proud about. Because I guess there's things that happen in your life that really, really make you resilient. And maybe you don't know it until it happens, what you're capable of doing. I guess it's something something I've had to ever face, really difficult circumstances. So I've never had to push myself and break through that. Instead I stress and I worry and I probably get angry too much. And Ahmad has he's very cool and calm, and I don't know if too much affects him or he's able to brush it off or something, but he doesn't show it. He doesn't, in what he says and what he does, it doesn't show that there's any kind of anger or resentment or I don't know, anything that he might be feeling living in this other kind of world. I think that's really remarkable. And every day I get to see this, happy smiling face.
Thank you.
Which makes me really happy. So that's what I'm most proud of.